Hello and welcome to Dark Matters. I'm Johnny Standing.
And I'm Carly Spell.
And we have our first guest on, tonysayers. He's a lovely bloke. And we have interesting things to talk about.
Yeah, so we've just interviewed him, and I suppose we were having a debrief, weren't we? Really.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of just wow, some of the topics that we did cover. We've gone from chakras to chakra removal to entity attachments to the matrix to the holographic nature of reality and cymatics and frequency and beyond. It was a real deep dive, wasn't it? And he's such a knowledgeable guy. It might not be for everybody. It may even ruffle a few feathers, but it certainly asked the question, didn't it?
Well, I hope so, because that's what Dark Matters is about, isn't it? We've said it on 0 Point that we postulate. We don't know. We're not saying we know anything or admit that we all know-alls. It's nothing to do with that. We need to bring all these things out, and together we could hopefully follow a path of unity to get ourselves from under the yoke of the things that are keeping us in a slave mind, really, and a slave mentality.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the big things that did come across, wasn't it? It's this idea of that we're dancing to somebody else's tune, and when we talk about us as energy, as light, and that light holds all this information, all this intelligent energy, that we're kind of resourcing ourselves back to intelligent infinity, and that we have it within us if we can kind of transcend. And Tony's website's called Transcending Times, and people who follow us know I've got a big thing about ending the trance of time. So he was a perfect first guest, and we kind of knew, didn't we? We've got our second episode coming up next week. We're in the studio recording it with the amazing Ant, and we've got Jim McCarthy from the Law of One, which is going to just be a complete mind blower on top of this awesome episode we've got as well to follow it through.
Yeah, I thought Tony is a lovely bloke, nice man. He's doing all his work himself, which is admirable. I really love that in somebody. When next week, Jim McCarthy, I can't wait for that. Can't wait. The Law of One. Whoa.
Yeah,
amazing.
And so people who aren't familiar with the Law of One, it is the Law of One, that we are all one. And Jim McCarthy was one of the original founders of LL Research, and they channeled an entity, a sixth density social memory complex called Ra, and the Ra material was born, which is 5 books. Jim McCarthy, who heads up LL Research, he is the last surviving member of the 3. Yeah. Don Elkins.
He was the scribe, wasn't he?
He was the scribe. Yeah. So it's going to be such an amazing... We're trying to, like Johnny says, create this narrative and take people on a story and a journey, but for people to make up their own minds as they go along, kind of just postulate, as we said in the original episode. But Tony, we covered some bases there, and again, the information, it may not be for you. But again, I think the key point that came from it, especially for me, is that it's our power. It's for us to discern, for us to decide, and to stop playing, into these third party narratives or dream state that we're kind of presented with, and for us to kind of take that power back from that system or that.
Absolutely, well put. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
and I think that we're making headway as well, because the more we have these discussions, the more than likely we're going to make breakthrough upon breakthrough to gleaning the purpose of what we're doing all this for. And I think it's really necessary, and I think it's very important work too.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that there'll always be detractors and people that will be saying things that, I don't agree with that, that's not right. Listen to it. This is what we don't do. We don't attach ourselves to it to such a degree that we formulate it as an absolute fact. That's it. It's definite. If you've got to keep the love in your heart, but you've got to keep your mind open, haven't you?
Yeah.
With discernment.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we touched on that, isn't it? The mind is useless when the eyes are blind, and we've got to kind of, keep this openness in our hearts, in our consciousness, and again, we're not playing into construct. We're not boxing ourselves in. And as we know, the system loves labels. It loves to constrict, to confine, and just to kind of, begin to start, knowing that the real answers lie within, for the kingdom is within. The kingdom of the mind, and that the original thought, as above so below, is within us all, and to not be led by another's tune. And we are beings of light, we are beings of frequency, and we know how powerful symbolism, frequency is on affecting our subconscious and conscious minds. So just to kind of to debunny, as I say, or deprogram from that matrix, or those machinations of and systems of dark control.
Exactly.
In a fancy way.
Again,
in old money.
Again, spot on, right on the note.
So we hope that you kind of enjoy it as much as we did. Tony was an absolutely fabulous guest. He said he'll come on and do a part 2, which is, we'll be giddy about that, and we can perhaps take it that bit further, can't we? But until that day, hopefully you'll enjoy it as much as we did.
Yeah, thank you.
So hello everybody, and welcome to Dark Matters. We are very honoured today to have a very special guest with us, Tonysayers. He has the website Transcending Times. He's wrote a book called New Age, The New Cage, and we're going to deep dive some interesting topics and theories, and some real thought-provoking stuff, isn't it, Johnny? So we're very honoured to have Tony with us here today. Johnny, I'll hand it over to Johnny.
Thanks very much, Tony.
Yeah, no, like I say, thanks for having me on. I'm honoured to be here, and always good to go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, great. Well, that's what we'll do. We'll start that. Where should we start, do you think?
Well, I think we could talk about the rabbit hole, isn't it? And that, I think the rabbit hole being a construct, perhaps even in and of itself. I think particularly for me, over these last 3 or 4 years since the pandemic, it has, I don't want to use the word woke. A lot of people, it's acted as a backdrop, hasn't it? Certainly to help people see the true nature of this place. And it certainly is a bit of a trap. It is a bit of a cage, whatever you want to call it, whether you call it the Matrix. And I think, I thought I was fairly planted down the rabbit hole until you kind of realize that actually being awake that's another construct in itself. The word, I like my cons in language, and I'm big into my etymology. I'm big into really getting into gematria and numerology and the mathematical interface of language and that code. And I think actually the hijacking of our consciousness, we're kind of talking about these overlords or overseers or the masons, and I think, as we know, consciousness creates matter, not the other way around. And I think that it's this, our consciousness, that has been hijacked, and it is us that is kind of creating it. So we are the coders and we are the decoders. So certainly, I find Tony's work extremely interesting in relation to the New Age. I'm anti the New Age is more giving it energy that I wouldn't even want to give it, really. But certainly, again, you've got your conscience, your confinements, your coffins, your contracts, your constitutions. The system is a big con. And it's so multi-layered. So again, like the rabbit hole. How Tony, did you kind of start your journey? I mean, I've been awake 20 odd years. We've just had a quick conversation, didn't we, before we started recording? But we've introduced ourselves on the first episode, haven't we? So if people haven't seen that, catch that. We don't want to take the time up talking about me or you. So
it's good. I love I love hearing some of the etymology, the words that you mentioned there. It's all in the language, isn't it? Spells or spellings, and when you look at wake up, what's awake? Well, you have awake when you're dead, right? So it's like, what does that even mean, right? But I mean, in terms of your question, where did it all start? I mean, boredom. I was bored. I was absolutely bored out of my skull. I was working I was working in the corporate world as an estate agent, working ridiculous hours back in the UK, and I just felt like a slave. And well, essentially, that's what I was. I didn't realise it at the time. It's funny, isn't it? You go through life thinking that that's normal, grinding away for someone else, getting someone else rich, giving up all your precious time to pay for things that no other species pays for. Like, you don't see the birds like going into a supermarket paying with seeds, or like paying for their nests or something. So the whole way that we live our lives is completely abnormal. But yeah, it was such a prominent aha moment for me, because intention is very, very strong. And if we only knew how strong our intention was, we might be a little bit more careful with it. And I remember I came home one day and I was just exhausted from work. I had a massive argument with my boss. I was just, and I remember standing in my kitchen, and I took a big, and I remember the actual thoughts that went through my mind then was like, there's got to be more to life than this. Like, I feel like a slave. I feel like I'm existing, I feel like I'm existing, not living, which was the title of my first book. In the end, and I was like, what is my purpose? Like, I can't be here just to be doing this all my life. And like, what is God? So for the first time in my life, I was 33, ironically. I started asking all these really big questions that I hadn't really pondered before. And then no sooner had I put that intention out there, boom, David Icke videos, boom, like 9/11 inside job, boom, like the moon landing, fake moon landing.
Yeah.
And my mind was blown, right? I was you know what it's like? You're like, oh my God, right?
Yeah.
And then I remember one day I was reading about chemtrails, and I thought, no, they wouldn't do that. And then I went out the next day on a viewing, and I looked up, I only saw them right over my head. I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, this is all true. This is So it was at that moment where, like we all do, we have a decision to make. We either realize that shit's going down and we just keep it inside of us, or we take the other option to speak up. And once I realized that they were trying to kill us all, because I've got a little niece and nephew, that I love dearly. I thought, well, I can't just stay silent, just if not for no one else, but for them and for all the other kids that are being harmed and stuff, and all that stuff. I thought I got, and two things went through my mind there. It was like, you're going to lose a lot of people, and you might have to give your life. And I lost a lot of people. And when I got you may have to give your life up, I, at the time, took it that, maybe they might kill me for speaking up, but it's not like that. It's what's happened is I've dedicated my life to the truth and putting information. So it's become my life. So, and so that was the very start of it. And from there, I started groups, and I was shouting from the rooftops about what was going on, and writing articles. Then I started my YouTube channel, and then things got really interesting for me around 2016, because that's when I really went into what I would refer to the deeper layers of the matrix, where this is really coming from. And where there's a lot of people out there that are sort of shouting and screaming at politicians how corrupt they are and all the surface level 3D stuff. But actually, that's not where this matrix is coming from. And those people are just puppets, really, for the entities that are residing in the fourth dimension that basically need our energy as food. This is like an energy farm that we live in. And so all these politicians and leaders and heads of corporations are actually hosted by these very evil entities. And not even just those. I think in the alternative media, we tend to think that it's just the likes of Bill Gates and all that. Entity attachments affect nearly everyone. Everyone has entity attachments to some degree. Some people have them more than others, and some people have heavier attachments more than others. So we have these energies just outside of our physical sight that we're almost blind, so we don't think there's anything more out there when there's loads more out there. Yeah. But so basically it started for me when with the chakra removal thing, funnily enough, because I was ranting and raving about the army and the military, saying how, you know, we shouldn't be in these countries, you know, bombing people, carpet bombing like sheep farmers and stuff, you know. And this video went viral. It went out to about. I woke up. I was living in Cambodia. I woke up the next morning.
Oh, I thought I seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, I got 40,000 hits on this video.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah, I saw it on your website. On
Yeah,
YouTube.
but unfortunately for me, it got into military circles, and I had a whole bunch of angry ex-servicemen, and I had about 25 death threats in my inbox.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that's it, isn't it? You know, I'm like I say, one of my big studies is etymology, especially, you know, having done the law and my understanding of the law and legalese. And, you know, legalese is black magic. It's Black's law. Black is coloured. It's counterfeit language, which led me on very nicely. I always had an interest in etymology, but, you know, like you were just saying, you know, that was always one of my big things to wake me up. Hang on a minute. I'm going to work to earn, and it, you know, job, you know, to get a job means persecution in Hebrew. To earn is, you know, what you put the ashes of the dead in. You know, it's all the language of the dead, and certainly, you know, in the legal sense, you know, with the dead fiction, you know, the dog Latin, and as I've said, you know, if you know, the Vatican is the beast, then its language is the beast system. So when we kind of can decode and start to, you know, get a grasp on how these systems work, it certainly shows up the darkness in it. But you know, politics, you talked about politics, we know that that's just theatre. You know, it's you know, the judges, you know, it's like statutes and acts, as I say. You know, an act is a great piece of theatre, but that's ultimately all that it is. It's we make it real with our minds. We give it the confidence, faith and belief, and we feed that system. Politics, you know, when we take break, you know, you talked about politics, we're given these two poles to choose from. We're given two people from the same corporate entity, and we're given this illusion that we have some kind of choice, but it's just this big distraction. And poly comes from many, and ticks is parasite, so it translates to many parasites. You know, the House of Lords, Lord in Hebrew means Baal. It's the House of Baal, and we can start to see who they are worshipping. And I think you mentioned obviously thought forms as well. You know, I'm big on the original thought, and that we kind of, you know, that's kind of transferred via kind of intelligent energy, and we get thought forms, don't we? And we've got these demons, or background programs, as they call it in computing terms, that we've been programmed with and that have been running our shows. So what do you think, Tony, about, obviously, we were having this conversation in relation to a video we watched on Cullen Smith, who's, you know, a great kind of decoder, you know, with the language and etymology. And the thought, do you believe these kind of programs or these demonic entities and these attachments in your experience are, you know, from, I know you do entity removal and things like that. Do you think there's something that are outside of ourselves? Because I think it's all in the mind. It's that, you know, we are that macrocosm to the microcosm of the, you know, the original thought of intelligent infinity, really. But, you know, that these thought forms are parasitical in us, or do you think it's something that comes and visits us at night, you know, and grabs hold of us externally?
Yeah, I don't think it's I don't think we're creating them. I have to say, I think these are separate from us, these entities, and it's the way I see this matrix is that it was never supposed to be like this. I think, I mean, I'm just looking outside now, you look outside, you look at nature, like how incredible it is. And, you know, humans left unchecked and untapped with all this interference, you know, that we're incredible. You know, this is why they need to do so much to poison us through the air, the water, the food. And not only that, then you look at the etheric implants and the entity attachment. So we're so incredible that we need all this interference, because left unchecked, we would just create absolute paradise, right? And so that's not good for them, because they feed on all our energy, but they particularly like the low frequency, anger, fear, sadness, depression. You know, so that's why this world is set up like that. That's why we have constant wars, constant famines. Because they need to keep it in that kind of low vibrational frequency, because that's like their caviar. So I think at some point, just like a computer, there's a virus that's come in, and it's overlaid this matrix with what we have now. But I don't think that what entities will do, going back to thought forms, they will hook in on your subconscious wounds. So it's not like you can create thought form entities. It's a whole entire different subject. So for example, if you've got someone that's really jealous and maybe like an ex-partner or something, they're completely obsessive over you, it is possible that those obsessive thoughts are so dark that they could actually create an entity. So it's like a half truth, right? It's like a half truth. But I think that there's also, well, I know there is a whole entire different entity races. You have serpent entities, dragon entities, like octopus entities, you've got demiurge, you've got demonic entities, there's so many forms of entities that are part of this virus, if you like. But it is possible that you can create entities as well, but I don't think that's the overarching problem. I think there's a virus here, and that's what's happened.
Right. Yeah. The description of how you came to your understanding of things is pretty similar to mine, but except for the difference, I was much younger, and a lot of the things hadn't occurred yet. Not even chemtrails weren't even up then. So basically, I've watched those things come into place. Everything you've spoken about, and we're on the same page. And that's what I was going to get at, really. That there's something in some of us. Like for me, the universe was all inspiring, and my questions were, why am I here? What's it all about? The usual starting points. And then there was practices of meditation and doing what have you, all these other different things, contemplation, philosophy, reading lots of different books, trying to go into the Vedas and all the rest of it, studied the Bible inside and out, all of those things. There's layers even in those things.
Yeah.
Different meaning, as you know yourself. But what is it, do you think, that makes the likes of, say, the three of us here having this discussion move in a general direction that we are doing, and when the rest of the people, not trying to be disparaging to anybody, but the so-called asleep, where they don't even try and wake up to even those fundamental questions at the beginning, and what's happening around them even. So when we get into, we're talking about entities, we've jumped the scale for anybody like that already. You see what I mean? So basically, I think that we are moving in that direction.
So the way I see this, and this in itself is quite triggering for people to hear, is that, I had the same thought the other day. I was on a 12-hour coach ride. I was going to a different part of Mexico, and they had the TV screens drop down, right, and they were playing film after movie, and everyone on the coach was like that for 12 hours. And I was looking out the window, pondering life, pondering questions, and I was looking and I was like, what makes them just like they're just like that? They're not. But there is something that I wanted to say, is that I would say up to 70% of the population are actually NPCs, non-player characters. So just like a computer game where you have like filling characters, you also have that with the people on this planet. This is why, no matter how much truth you could tie someone into a chair, make them watch YouTube documentaries for an entire day, and they still wouldn't get it, and they still not interested, right? Because they are programmed people. What I would describe as them is that they don't have a soul. They have like
soulless beings.
They have like and if you study near-death experiences, a lot of people have reported seeing these mechanical souls in these humans, and I think that's what we're dealing with. I think that there's 30% of us that are source players, soul players, with a soul, and there's the other percentage of the population that are just filling characters, and they have no curiosity, and they literally you could lay a golden egg of truth on their table, and they would still reject it, call you crazy. And you can see
I might try that.
you can see the program kicking in when you try and wake them up, right? You'll say, well, look, have you researched what's into the, and they jump to the defense of the Matrix. If you watch the film The Matrix, that's the Agent Smith character. You see the Agent Smith character come forward, and that's what we're dealing with. And these people, what came to me in that coach journey is, what makes someone like an NPC is they don't have that curiosity that we have, that wanting to know. All right, for some of us like me, it came a bit later, because although we have souls, we're still under this kind of spell that's being cast. So for some people, it can take a little bit longer, but a lot of the population, they literally are programs, basically. Now, the question is, can consciousness permeate those souls at some point? Can they have the potential to undo the hijacking? Is another question.
I think that is the thing. I know on Dark Matters, mine and Johnny's site, it's a private site. You kind of have to enter it. You have to request to join, and it's not that we're being, an elitist in any kind of way, but it says on there, it is the question that drives us. The clue again is in the language. It's a quest. If you've not started on that hero's journey of asking the right questions, and Trinity says it to Neo in the nightclub after he's followed the white rabbit, it is the question that drives us. Because like you said, Tony, they're not going to understand the answer if they've not asked the question. We can bark the answer at people till we're blue in the face. Well, unless they've created that neural pathway, unless they've asked that question themselves, they're not going to understand the answer, and that's 42, that we, not this crude matter are we. People think that they are this, and certainly in the Law of One again, I think it's the language that is the division. It's the Tower of Babel. What we all actually talk about a lot of the time is the same thing. It's got different cultural kind of pinpoints and references, but the Tower of Babel is that separation of the language that we're using. But actually, they are soulless bots. They are soulless beings, and we're kind of bashing our head against these brick walls. And I follow a guy, he's a decoder called Decode Your Reality, and it's just so interesting that there's so much information and misinformation out there. But when we start to see that this reality, what is reality, has been hijacked, I think it is like an overlay. Yes. It would have been Edenic initially, like you said about nature, Tony, and how we would have just been living quite harmoniously, with our senses, with what we can, what is sensory to us. They keep us constantly trapped in the past and the future, even with our language, the English language as the construct, when really this hijacking of our consciousness, I believe we are, like I say, we are the coders and we are the decoders, really. The hijacking of our, this constant looking at their narratives of what's happening, fear porn, we keep staring at it, because if we're looking out there, this whole place is to distract us and keep us constantly looking outward when we should be going inward.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And that's their biggest fear. Their biggest fear is that we'll go inwards and start realizing who and what we are. And like you say, left unchecked. I mean, we all, one of the things that we all have is psychic abilities. I mean, we all have that. We all have the abilities to clear entities and to remote view stuff, and telepathy, maybe teleportation. I mean, who knows what we're actually capable of? They don't teach us it in school for obvious reasons. And then B, when you get older, people think you're crazy if you start talking about those things. But we have incredible potential. And what I'm trying to get out there and encouraging people to do is to, start realizing that you are an incredible being. You are such a powerful, as a human soul, you are a powerful, creative being. And this is what they're terrified of. And they are terrified of us remembering who and what we are. And this is why they need to do so much hijacking on a physical level, on an energetic level. Because once we do wake up to that knowing, then, it's game over for them. And they provide so much outside stuff to get you hooked into. I mean, look at all the things that you can give your power away to, and look at your savior. You've got Jesus, you've got angels, you've got guides, you've got you've got like gurus, you've got like, it's all out there, all out there. What they don't want you to do is to ponder your own
The kingdom is within, isn't it, Johnny?
And what I say that I usually find, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it as well, is that those of us who are doing this kind of work, this kind of research, and doing the inner work, shadow work, and all the rest of it, seem to have a lot of love or understanding about, you know, how to be compassionate, sympathy, empathy, all of those good qualities, without it being sort of, you know, too much in the polarity of super positive. It's not just that. There's a balance being in the middle, isn't there? It's rather than going one way or the other.
Yeah, I think one of the things that the New Age heavily promotes is this. I call it toxic positivity. Where
that from you, I think, recently. I've been using it myself.
where everything's love and light. Just focus on your high vibration. You know, don't look at any negative, because you might draw more of it into yourself. This is a deception, right? If you don't look, if you don't look at the causal problem of an issue, it's going to continue, right?
That's right. Yeah.
It's not like you're going to draw more of it in. It's actually, you're actually going to stop it, right? Because you can take action. But the New Age tells you the opposite. It says, oh, you create your own reality, and if you focus on like what they're doing, then you're just going to draw it more in. So like none of it makes sense. And a lot of New Age people that go into the New Age, they love all that, because you know, a lot of them have got a lot of trauma and they don't want to look at their trauma. They want a quick fix. So when some New Age guru comes along and says, hey, you know, you don't have to do that shadow work that you talk about, that's so incredibly important. You can just think, you know, sit under an oak tree, sing Kumbaya and you know, have a drum ceremony and think love and light. And then you're going to be great. You're going to be fine. Or what you can do is you can go to Peru, take some jungle juice for an hour, smash your consciousness open yourself up to loads of entities, and you're healed. Great, right? It's just, there's so much BS out there. It's unbelievable. And I'm glad you brought that point up about the idea that we have to be like super positive.
I'm totally not with that, because it's, you know, even when you read about Hermeticism and you read about even Freemasonry, it's always the middle way. You know, it's balance. It's Star Wars. It's balance. Daniel's son. It's the Karate Kid. It's the middle way. I think
the middle way is particularly Buddhist statement too,
and Buddhist as well. Yeah, we say at Dark Matters, it's a resource platform to resource yourself to the true source. Not this hijacked this, you know, the refracted light and luminous beings are we, you know, when we get into that, we, you know, we are made of light in that sense. And, you know, light is intelligent energy, and matter is that energy condensed to a slow vibration. And what gives matter legitimacy is time, which is why the elites love time, and they love that, you know, the king's coronation. You know, if you understand symbolism and you start to understand what it is you're looking at, because you've decoded that and you can see things as they truly are, you know, cleanse the doors of perception, as Aldous Huxley said, etc., then you start to realize that's called the arcana of time. It's all about them, you know, keeping that control of us. You know, it's like what Logan says in Decode Your Reality. It's not the Masons, it's not the Jesuits, it's not all these things that are outside of yourself that are, you know, are creating this. We're creating it, and we have to take responsibility for what that is. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't things that are outside of ourselves. You know, it's like, you know, it's not that we're co-creators, but they're black magicians of sorts. They know what that hijack is, and they utilize it to their own advantage. Like you say, Tony, it's, you know, in the law of one, it would be 4D negative entities operating in time space. That, you know, we're 4D view 3D, you know, 4D view in 3D, whereas 3D we view in 2D. So, you know, call them the sky people, call them whatever, but they're kind of perhaps having some kind of control mechanism over this place.
It's like a deliberate deception, isn't it? You know it when you see it in the higher echelons of the elites and the corporation, the bankers and the families that are running it, all that.
I mean,
there's a non-human thing behind that as well. Yeah. So what do you think?
Yeah, something far darker and far timeless. That, you know,
there's no doubt that we're under attack. I mean, you know, to a degree, yes, by our ignoring stuff that's going on, by our refusal to look at stuff that's going on, yes, we're ensuring that that continues and gets worse. But I wouldn't go as far to say that we're creating everything. You know, there is definitely outside forces.
There's a co-creation, I think. I'm always a bit kind of like that.
There's this virus, the Watico, whatever you want to refer it to. I just say it's all these entity races that are trying to hijack our energy. And of course, and then they all have their agendas, and then you have AI that has its own agenda as well. You know, AI wants to exist in human bodies in physical form. So you have these entity races with their agendas, and you even have AI with its own agenda. So, you know, to say that we're not being attacked or we're not, it's a little bit too far to say that we're creating everything. But we are ensuring that, you know, it continues and gets worse, depending on how much action we take and what we're doing to stop.
That's a good way to kind of look at it. It's more like, yes, we are part of that co-creation, but everyone has their own part of that co-creation. There are agendas, and you know, I suppose it's you know, duality reality that we find ourselves in. You know, this light, dark, yin, yang, hot, cold, male, female. For me, again, it is about kind of taking that step back from that cosmic chessboard, and it is the middle way. It's the balance. It ain't farting rainbows out your backside and skipping about in a pair of pants doing your ayahuasca and your cacao ceremonies. No offense to anybody, and apparently we've just learned that cacao, I always knew there was something not quite right about it. I've been invited to so many cacao ceremonies and I go, there's something quite, and I thought, and then Johnny's like, shut fucking hot chocolate anyway. And I'm but we just had a brief guest in the studio who informed me that, and I might be getting this wrong because I'm no scientist, but it's full of, was it oxalate, Sant?
Oh, probably, yeah.
Oh yes, it's full of great stuff, but actually it's really fucking bad for you.
Oh yeah, it's straight out of the New Age. Anything in the New Age, I don't touch with a barge pole, as you guys know with my channel. So
and you know, I have really enjoyed your videos because, you know, it's like we were saying, it's not perhaps that we all necessarily have to agree, but it's asking the question. It's part of the quest. You know, I wouldn't want to just be constantly asking questions to somebody who's going to agree with everything that I say. You know, it's part of that learning, isn't it? And like I say, you know, this idea that we were Edenic, for me, kind of, you know, and this hijack of our consciousness and this spiritual war, so to speak, is, you know, get it down to numerology as well. You know, when we get light refracted through a prism, it's 7. The rainbow is a full 7, and we know how much they've loved the rainbows recently, but they're all the 6. And 42, the answer to the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. 4 + 2 is 6. 666 is matter. Now in scripture it says, you know, for the mark of the beast is 666, and it is the number of man, to, you know, reckon the number of the beast. But reckon, from Greek and Latin, means to calculate or to solve. So I think and this is just perhaps me, and I'd like to get your thoughts on it, you know, with this idea of that we were Edenic before we were given the choice, and we've been choosing it ever since, enslaved by our own free will to a degree, but obviously, with other perhaps things going on there too. The 6, you know, like on the Pink Floyd album cover, the light becomes the 6. Now, I think that's where there's this idea of something's been imprinted over the kind of original Edenic creation, that where they're using our consciousness as the hijack to maintain whatever this, perhaps a cube, because we know that they love Saturn worship and Father Time. And I've seen it in old Gnostic texts where it's a hex, because a hex is the cube, and it's got the sun on the top, which is our cosmic mind, and something's been imprinted over it. And these 4D entities, potentially, again, in the Law of One, it will talk about the Orion group and how, you know, obviously that control mechanism down to its minions playing on that side of the dark, but that to maintain this balance of choice. So do you think that this place is about a choice, like the dark are here to show us like what we are not, or do you think that
no, I don't think that, because you know, that the idea that the you know, the dark are helping us to realize ourselves, I mean, they're raping kids, right? You know, there's other ways that we can learn. Right?
It's not funny. I laugh. It's like a dentist thing. It's like, you know.
I know, but it really, it's another like New Age concept that we're here to learn, and this Earth is a school, and all this stuff, you know. And if you research NDEs, you know, we get our memory wiped when we come back down. There's the veil of forgetfulness. So so if Earth is a school, why would we have our memory wiped, right? It doesn't make sense. Because we're unable to learn things that we forget. That's why they call it research, right? Because we're coming back and we're researching things that we're already. Yeah, I think that I'm very much of the opinion that this place has been. I think you're right. It's been overlaid. It's been hijacked. And I think where we're at right now, we're at a crossroads in terms of we either end this for good or it's going to go into like a technological prison.